Barrage of new developments right now in the Russia investigation. That's right, it's back. First, the GOP chairman and ranking Democratic member of the Senate Judiciary Committee have written a letter to Jared Kushner's attorney asking for missing documents related to Russia and WikiLeaks. And according to a source with firsthand knowledge, special counsel Robert Mueller's team issued a subpoena to President Trump's campaign back in October. Let's get the details now from a guy who has truly been working overtime for months now, NBC News intelligence and national security reporter Ken Delaney, and also former Williams College football star. All right, Ken, what are you learning about the subpoena?
Stephanie, a source with firsthand knowledge tells me that it's a subpoena for documents and emails covering multiple custodians, multiple people. And the source is sort of downplaying it, saying, look, the campaign has already provided voluntarily around 20,000 documents, and it's not clear why this subpoena is being issued by the grand jury now. But what a subpoena does is it's a legal demand, so it ratchets up the stakes for noncompliance. Some others who are looking at this say it suggests that Mueller's team is not completely happy with the voluntary cooperation arrangement and wanted to issue this demand.
Okay, then. So Jared Kushner's attorney could say all day long, we've sent you over 20,000 documents, but if the ones with the juice in them are missing, they're the ones that count. And isn't that the case here?
Well, that's exactly right. Now you're talking about the Jared Kushner documents. You know, interestingly, a letter went out yesterday from the Senate Judiciary Committee, not only the Democrat, but the Republican, accusing Kushner of basically failing to turn over very significant documents. And the most tantalizing phrase that was used in this letter was a Russian backdoor overture. Now, we don't know exactly what to make of that. There was also an email about WikiLeaks to Kushner that they say wasn't turned over, and some correspondence with a Russian businessman named Sergei Millian, who's involved in some various Trump business ventures. And so the suggestion here is, look, we got these documents from other people in our investigation, and we should have gotten them from you, Jared Kushner, and we did not. And that came from a Republican.
Hold on a second. Ken, how long is this list going to get of Jared Kushner forgetting information, not filling out the form right? I mean, come on. On one hand, when President Trump won this election, Jared Kushner was going to be in charge of innovation, technology, China, peace in the Middle East, but he can't seem to figure out how to fill out a form right and how to get all the information forward on anything he's ever asked to. Give me a break.
And he's got a crackerjack legal team that is doing this for him, Stephanie. So, yeah, it's a mystery why this is happening.
All right, now let's talk about George Papadopoulos. You got new news about him?
Yeah, there's a report in Politico that he was giving interviews to Greek journalists and portraying himself as a very important figure in the Trump campaign, said that he was up for a big job, you know, when Trump took office and had a blank check. And, you know, even the...
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
A juror today was reacting to the case against Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, and they said, when presented with the evidence, that's it. It's a sign that when people do arrange political bribes, they don't tend to leave the kind of explicit evidence of a bribe the prosecutors need. It's also a sign that the Supreme Court made it a lot harder to prosecute corruption cases with that unanimous decision against Virginia Republican Governor Bob McDonnell. Now, today, with Senator Menendez getting a mistrial, prosecutors say that just shows it is really hard to bring corruption cases. But according to Menendez's defense, it shows the standard is still subject to abuse and targeting. After this 9-week trial and a week of deliberation, the jury was deadlocked, which got us that mistrial, and Senator Menendez was emotional on the steps today.
I'm so blessed to have 2 great children, and I love you so much I can't.
And Senator Menendez then hammered a theme that his side has long argued, that whatever friendship he had with this donor and whatever gifts he took, there was no formal bribe. He also said he was targeted. In fact, at one point, he basically said the FBI and our state can't understand that a, quote, Latino kid from Union City could grow up to be a U.S. senator. Tough talk for a man who could still face another trial if the DOJ decides to retry the case. So why is Menendez so confident? Well, he got a very good sign from one juror who says this whole jury was very close to acquitting him. But in that unusual twist, she basically says that this was a mistrial because a few people were holding out deadlocked on the way to acquittal.
What I saw in the courtroom was that he was not guilty of all counts, and so was Dr. Mueller. They are friends. Majority is still saying not guilty.
So jurors may have accepted Menendez's friend defense. They were friends. And jurors may have felt hemmed in by that ruling I mentioned from the Supreme Court that narrows what corruption is. And jurors have to be fair, and they have to follow the law. But the policy question remains. If you can give a politician gifts and say they were just for friendship, won't a lot of politicians collect a lot more friends like that?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Speaking carefully, he's an accused pedophile, and nobody here at this table, nobody in the press, is the judge, the jury, or the cops in this case. But you have a story that is sourced time and time and time again. There is woman after woman who has spoken out and put in her face to the words. There's background information that has been reported in terms of this man being banned from a mall and calling a school and trying to pick up a girl. This is all information that is out in the public for the public to decide upon, even though the judge, the jury, and the cops have not been involved. And that's what makes this dicey when you get to other stories, because some of them look a little bit different, but involve some of the same issues. We're going to turn now to the Al Franken story, where yesterday morning a radio news anchor accused the Democratic senator of forcibly kissing and groping her a decade ago. We actually got an early tip on the story that it was about to break from Roger Stone, the former campaign advisor to Donald Trump. Although he's banned from Twitter, an account connected to him posted, quote, Roger Stone says it's Al Franken's time in the barrel. Franken's next in the long list of Democrats to be accused of grabby behavior. That was posted around 1 a.m., hours before the Franken allegations broke. Incidentally, time in the barrel is the same language Stone used to reference John Podesta's leaked emails in the 2016 race before WikiLeaks released those emails. Oh, my Lord. Now to the accusation itself. Leanne Tweeden says it happened in 2006, before Franken was a senator, during a rehearsal when they were both on tour overseas with the USO.
He just mashed his lips against my face, and he stuck his tongue in my mouth so fast. And all I can remember is that his lips were really wet and it was slimy. And I remember I pushed him off with my hands. And I just remember I almost punched him. So, because every time I see him now, like, my hands clench into fists, and I'm sure that's probably why. And I said, if you ever do that to me again, I'm not going to be so nice about it the second time. And I just walked out away from him, and I walked out, and I just wanted to find a bathroom, and I just wanted to rinse my mouth out.
Tweeden released this photograph yesterday showing Franken grabbing her chest while she slept on that tour. Initially, Franklin released a short statement saying he remembers the rehearsal differently, adding, I send my sincerest apologies to Leanne. As to the photo, it was clearly intended to be funny, but wasn't. I shouldn't have done it. In a second and longer statement, Senator Franken apologized again, writing that he respects women and that, quote, I don't know what was in my head when I took that picture, and it doesn't matter. There's no excuse. I look at it now and I feel disgusted with myself. It isn't funny. It's completely inappropriate. Tweeden said yesterday she accepts Senator Franken's apology. In his second statement, Franken said he would gladly cooperate with an ethics investigation, and that is exactly what many Democrats called for yesterday. Senator Franken's fellow Minnesota Senator, Amy Klobuchar, said this should not have happened to Leanne Tweeden. I strongly condemn this behavior, and the Senate Ethics Committee must open an investigation. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand said the Ethics Committee deserves answers from Senator Franken. And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said sexual harassment is never acceptable and must not be tolerated. I hope and expect that the Ethics Committee will fully investigate this troubling incident.
I think it's really good that Al Franken wants to step up and be investigated and answer questions, and I really look forward to hearing from him about this. The allegations are horrible, and he admits to it. I want to know what happened and why. President Trump also weighed in on Twitter last night, writing, the Al Frankenstein picture is really bad, speaks 1,000 words. Where do his hands go in pictures 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 while she sleeps? And to think that just last week he was lecturing anyone who would listen about sexual harassment and respect for women. Lesley Stahl tape. The president's comment about Lesley Stahl appears to reference a 1995 New York Magazine article about a discussion between Saturday Night Live writers where Franken suggests a joke about a scenario where Stahl is assaulted. In his book, Giant of the Senate, Franken says the extremely dark joke was never intended to air on television.
And I want to talk about Trump's reaction.
Trump's reactions.
Well, here's what I think is going to be fascinating to watch. Obviously, countless women came forward with allegations against Trump before the election, before he was president. We have a different moment in time now. And I wonder, are there going to be new emboldened women, maybe with the same way Rose McGowan or Ashley Judd had some much more higher, what I would say, ability to do it because of their renownedness. And I wonder if right now women are going to start to say, you know what, I'm not afraid. I know he's the president. And it's going to be interesting if there's a denouement to these stories, and if all of a sudden he's brought back into this.
And I think there will be. I mean, because you look at the papers and look at Twitter and look at the wire feed, and it's not only the big celebrated cases about people who are famous across the country that we talk about here, but everywhere in the country on lower levels of state legislatures everywhere, this is coming out. And so I do think that, assuming there are other women who have something to say about President Trump, I think they'll come out.
And there is a change in the environment. Look at the way Donald Trump attacked his accusers when he was running for president. He hasn't yet attacked the accusers against Roy Moore, which shows that he's actually concerned about something, because this is not a man who generally holds his Twitter thumbs, if you will. So I think that coming out in this environment, the women are, if there are women to come out, just like there may be more women to come out against Al Franken. And unfortunately, I think we're in an environment by the end of this year, we may hear about at least 2 or 3 other high-powered business executives or elected officials that this is going to break.
Gene, along those lines,
what time is it? You know,
Gene, I'd love your take. We were having a very delicate conversation in the first hour about all men, just about every man I know has got to look in the mirror and at different moments of time have asked women out, or, where is and 50% of this country has had relationships in the workplace. Where's the line? How do we start to, the Harvey Weinsteins, the animals, the beasts, the pedophiles, versus misbehavior in the workplace? And you've grown up in newsrooms, so I don't
exactly.
How do we get our arms around this?
It was a different time when I started in newsrooms.
So how do we get our arms around it?
Well, I don't think it's, I don't think this is rocket science, right? There's some things that are clearly beyond the pale. You don't touch people without their consent.
Right.
Inappropriate. You don't kiss people, uninvited in that sort of way, and I don't think that was like that complicated back then. I mean, I think we should have known.
Any physical aggression.
And there was a certain, like I don't, in your work settings, but certainly in work settings, the newspaper I worked at before the Post and in the early days at the Post, there were men who would say things that we would now consider wildly inappropriate.
Right.
But in today's context, okay, we'd say that was not good, but we would put it in the prior context. And there's some things that the context hasn't changed, right? And so I think we can make those distinctions. We just have to get the stories out, and we have to talk about it. And it's a difficult conversation for some people, because there are like people we really love and respect, who are going to get ensnared in this.
But where power dynamics get complicated too in the workplace is it doesn't always have to be touching or even a comment. It can be implied that somebody who is above you, or somebody who could perhaps help your career, says, let's go grab a drink.
Right.
And you can speak to this better than I can. Is that a woman might say to herself, you know what, maybe it's in my best interest to go have that drink, and who knows where that leads. So in other words, it's not the old time like I grabbed your butt in the office, but if someone asks you out, you might think, I am being coerced in some way, because if I don't go have that drink, I'll be shunned or I'll be passed over, I won't be part of the club.
That's abuse of power, and that's what harassment is about,
right?
Power.
Right, so we can't just look at words and physical action.
At the same time,
it's coerciveness.
Colleagues go out and have drinks.
Well, that's why I mean it's a very complicated thing.
It is complicated, but you know what? You kind of know when you feel if you're being set up or not. And
Right.
if you are, then you take appropriate actions, whether you're a man or a woman, because let's face it, in the workplace now, you see more and more women, and that's the difference when we talk about context. If you go back 30 years ago versus today, there's many more women throughout industry that are peers with men, not necessarily the secretarial role or the odd woman who's kind of climbing up the ladder. So I think that it is on women, too, that it's okay to go have a drink with a colleague, whether it's a male or a female. And if you're uncomfortable doing it, don't do it. If you feel like you're jeopardized, most companies do have resources for you. The problem is that the U.S. government does not have a resource for young women to go to.
At the Washington Post, since I've been there, which is since DIRT, we've always had glass offices.
Yeah.
We've always had see-through offices.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
No, but you know what? Actually, can I take that a step further? I'm not sure it's okay to go have drinks. I think we're at a point in time where we need to look at work as a place for professional behavior. For example, glass offices. Yeah, that's a good idea. How about leaving the office door open, especially when you're meeting with an underling? Like at the doctor's office, there's always a nurse in the room. There's a reason for that.
Mika, then go to every corporation now that is putting bars into workplaces.
Look, I know, and coffee bars and this and that, it's trying to be a social experience, and millennials have sleep pods where they end up having sex. I mean, I've literally heard about that, and it's ridiculous. But maybe we need to dial back. Maybe drinks in the evening with a male senior in a senior position who's much older than you is not a good idea. Maybe he shouldn't ask, and maybe she shouldn't go. Maybe it's lunch, maybe it's coffee, maybe it's a meeting in the office with the door open. Why do we all have to go out to dinner at night with members of the opposite sex when we're working with them?
But then that's reverse feminism. If I'm a woman and I'm in a company and there's an important meeting and I'm not going to go because I'm a woman, and that's not reality of business. I'm talking about a group
men don't
of
need
people.
to ask for drinks.
But the groups, I will go into any restaurant in Manhattan tonight, and there's tables and tables of 3 women and 4 guys work together, and there's liquor on the table.
That's a problem.
But that's going to happen.
It's reality.
There's a certain totally legitimate kind of institutional and organizational bonding that takes place in successful organizations.
Offsites. Offsites.
Yeah,
people spend millions of dollars to put people to hug trees together.
Exactly.
So we got to figure this out. But the answer is it's not going to not happen.
They can hug trees, just not each other, okay? All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, this.
We have tried this before, and many of you were here. President Bush did this. He said, we're going to cut taxes for the wealthy. It's going to lead to growth. Wages are going to go up. We had the most stagnant decade of growth since the Great Depression, and it ended in a complete economic collapse. This is a canard. This economic philosophy stinks. It doesn't work, and it hammers working class people.
Congressman Tim Ryan had kind of some strong words for the Republican tax proposal. The Ohio Democrat joins us next to talk about it, and we'll get the latest reporting from the White House. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.
A few days ago, Julia Ioffe at The Atlantic magazine had a bombshell report that during the presidential campaign last year, Donald Trump's eldest son, Don Jr., he exchanged direct messages on Twitter with WikiLeaks. Donald Trump Jr. released some of the messages himself shortly after that Atlantic piece dropped, including the one where WikiLeaks tells him there's a specific link that should be used while promoting WikiLeaks' stolen Democratic documents. 2 days after getting that advice from WikiLeaks about how to most efficiently promote their stolen documents, Donald Jr., in fact, tweeted that exact link to his followers, which means it's now settled at a granular level that the Trump campaign, or at least the Trump family, did provide direct assistance to the Russian intelligence operation that used WikiLeaks to distribute stolen Democratic documents during our election. So just in case we're keeping track of that old chestnut, that's now not just proven, but agreed to. Julia Ioffe also reported that on the same day Donald Jr. got his first message from WikiLeaks, he told everybody else on the campaign that he was now in contact with WikiLeaks. He told Steve Bannon, he told Kellyanne Conway, he told Brad Parscale, he told Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner then told Hope Hicks. And we don't know exactly how the Atlantic got a hold of those messages, but we do know that Don Jr.'s turned over documents to the Senate Judiciary Committee, as have others, including Paul Manafort and the campaign itself. Last month, the committee asked Jared Kushner to turn over documents as well, and apparently he did turn over some. But today, in a letter to Jared's lawyer, the Judiciary Committee said there's a problem, and they broke some news while explaining this problem. The committee's lawyer told, the committee told Jared Kushner's lawyer, quote, "You produced documents to the committee, but the production appears to have been incomplete. There are several documents that are known to exist, but were not included in your production. For example, other parties have produced September 2016 email communications to Mr. Kushner concerning WikiLeaks, which Mr. Kushner then forwarded to another campaign official, Hope Hicks. Such documents should have been produced to us, but they were not." In other words, hey, Jared, you said you gave us all the relevant Russia emails and messages, but over here in Don Jr.'s pile, there are these other emails to you and from you about Russia stuff. What gives? But that's not all. That correspondence about WikiLeaks, which the committee says Jared Kushner left out, we know what that is, or at least we think we do, because of that reporting from Julia Ioffe at The Atlantic. But the Judiciary Committee also describes something else in this letter to Kushner's lawyer. It's correspondence that we didn't previously know about before today. It's stuff we've never heard about, at least as far as I can tell. Quote, "Other parties have also produced documents concerning a Russian backdoor overture and dinner invite, which Mr. Kushner also forwarded." Russian backdoor overture and dinner invite, you say? The letter continues, quote, "And still other parties have produced communications with Sergei Milyan, copied to Mr. Kushner." Sergei Milyan, who runs kind of a fake Russian-American business group, widely reported to be one of the key sources for the Christopher Steele dossier, for the report by the former British intelligence officer about connections between Trump and Russia. Sergei Milyan has claimed to be a big player in Trump circles, but Trump's advisors have sworn up and down this guy had nothing to do with Donald Trump. But today we learned that somebody in the campaign was corresponding with him during the campaign and copying Jared Kushner. And then Jared Kushner didn't hand that over when he was asked. Kushner's lawyer, Abby Lowell, who's also representing Bob Menendez, busy day today, Abby, says in a statement today that he and his client have produced all relevant documents, but they say they are happy to respond to additional requests from the committee. Senators are giving them until the 27th of this month to hand over the missing materials and anything else they might be holding back, including a gazillion categories of information related to Michael Flynn. In the meantime, though, the committee has now sent this letter, which is a public document, alerting not only Jared Kushner, but all the rest of us that they've got communications involving Kushner and a Russian backdoor overture during the campaign. Also correspondence with a guy who reportedly provided juicy information for the Steele dossier. Why are they telling us all of this? Why did they do this in a public letter? And is there more stuff Jared Kushner didn't turn over that they know they ought to be able to get? You know, Senate Judiciary Committee, if you're trying to get our attention, you're being a little obvious about it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
1 year after helping him to elect him to the presidency, voters from the key battleground state of North Carolina are expressing some frustration with Donald Trump. A 12-person focus group run by veteran pollster Peter Hart on behalf of Emory University delivered harsh reviews for the president's conduct since taking office. Among the group, 5 voted for Trump. Here's what 2 of them had to say.
I thought his ideas appealed to me. Since he's been in there, he's embarrassed me by his behavior. No. He behaves unpresidential. I can't imagine how they let him build a country club, let alone be in one, because we don't behave that way.
He doesn't facilitate working together. He comes out with these grandiose ideas and there's no follow through.
Despite the voters' tough critiques of Trump's behavior and his lack of accomplishment, they say, none of the 5 Trump voters would rule out supporting him again.
I'm still optimistic. He still has a lot of time to prove something. It's still better than having a career politician in there. He has had a harder road because everybody hates him, not just the Democrats and not just the Republicans.
But you've been pretty tough on him, too.
Yeah, I mean, I expect a lot out of him.
And joining us now, a member of the House Committee on Financial Services, Democratic Congressman John Delaney of Maryland. He is already running for his party's presidential nomination. Congressman, good to have you.
Welcome.
Great to be here. I'm going to forgive you for having gone to Bergen Catholic High School, which is my rival high school. Let's not get into
We'll see
football.
if I get through the whole show without that coming.
Well, I want to talk about the tax bill that passed yesterday in just a second, but I think people will hear he's already in the presidential race. You actually got in this summer, in early August.
Yeah.
What is your message, or what should be the national message of Democrats, one that didn't work for Hillary Clinton running last year against Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I think we should be the party that wants to return civility to politics, wants to return some notion of respect to the profession of public service, and actually wants to bring the party that brings the country together and starts focusing on some of the things we agree on, as opposed to always talking about the things we don't agree on, which is what's basically happened in
politics.
politics.
What? What's an example of that?
Well, infrastructure. There's a great example. The country broadly agrees we need much more investment in infrastructure by any measure. It'll create jobs. It'll make our businesses more competitive. It'll improve the lives of our citizens. So, that's what we should be focused on. And but we're not doing that. We're talking about these very divisive issues, and we continue to do that. And so that's an example of something we should be doing.
And what about the divisive issues? Are you talking about like social issues? You don't think you should go so hard left on those, or at least not talk about them and put them out front?
I think one of the problems with the Democratic Party is we are sometimes 1,000 flowers blooming. We have a lot of issues we care about, but at the end of the day, what the American people most care about is their job, their pay, and opportunity for their children.
So let's talk about this tax bill. You voted against it, of course. We just heard your colleague, Congressman Ryan, ripping it to shreds. What do you object to in the bill?
So I think, obviously, the bill disproportionately benefits wealthy Americans. It does a lot of things to hurt middle-class Americans. But I think the thing that I object to the most in the bill is it's fundamentally not solving the principal problem we have in this country right now. The principal problem we have in this country right now is we're not investing in infrastructure and in human capital. They're using a strategy that was deployed 40 years ago by Ronald Reagan and Bill Bradley. And their strategy back then was to try to get more private capital invested in the economy. Right now, we have no shortage of private capital invested in this economy. What we have a shortage of is public capital. Right? Our infrastructure investment as a percentage of our economy has been cut in half. We haven't invested in human capital. There's 7 million jobs in this country that are unfilled because companies can't find workers with the skills. So we should be doing tax reform that addresses those problems.
You have a background in business. Isn't lowering the corporate tax rate a good idea for companies that then hire more people, and that's a way to grow the economy?
It is, but it should be done. Right now, the corporate tax rate on average, right, that we pay in this country is very consistent with our competitors, right? So we talk about 35%, but in fact, on average, they pay in the low 20s. So the way to get the corporate tax rate down is actually to eliminate deductions, right, not to just cut the rate. Clearly, it would be better to have the corporate tax rate lower. But if you go to CEOs who are running major companies and you ask them what's the central issue they're facing right now, it's really not the tax code. It's a shortage of workers. It's the skills gap. It's the fact that the country hasn't invested in infrastructure. It's the fact that the public schools aren't producing kids that have the skills they need. These are the central issues. And what we should be doing as part of tax reform is not trying to solve a problem that existed 40 years ago, when in fact the marginal tax rates were really high and there were a lot of tax shelters. So what people were doing was investing in non-economic investments, and capital wasn't flowing efficiently. What we should be doing is using our tax code to encourage the kind of behavior we actually need to grow our economy, which is more infrastructure, more human capital. That's what you need to compete in a world that's rapidly changing based on technological innovation, automation, and globalization.
So I'm curious, especially since you're running for president, watching that focus group, was that those Trump voters who seemed, really broken, just totally depressed and disappointed, and yet they still might support him again. What does that say about the Democratic Party and about who even potentially could be an inspirational figure?
Well, it says that we're not speaking to the American people about what they care about. I think what the American people are dying for is someone to actually try to bring us together, to actually bring competence to government, to actually focus on some of the things we agree on, and to really be almost with a singular focus on the things that moves most Americans, which is their job, their pay, and opportunity for their children. Yeah. Every time we're not talking about that.
It's not happening right now, is it? I mean, did you see? I mean, I couldn't believe what I watched there. It was the saddest thing I think I've ever seen.
Well, but it's moving, right? They were sold the con. Right, you know that, and you can see it, kind of the realization.
But there's
coming.
nowhere to go.
But there was also what you heard is that they were upset with the behavior more than anything else. They're still hopeful for some new ideas. And what I would ask you is, as running for president, we talk about a divisive country, but what about the party itself? How do you bring the Democratic Party behind you from the different factions it has?
Well, I think the voters often decide this, right? And I think the voters are in different places than where party leadership is. So some of the things I'm talking about when running for president is the first 100 days only doing things on a bipartisan basis, having the president go to the Congress once a quarter and debate the Congress, just like the Prime Minister does in Great Britain, for 3 hours primetime television, to get to the truth. Yeah. Talking about the country as if half the people are not entirely wrong about everything they believe. Right? That's the kind of leadership that I think the country's looking for. And that's the kind of leadership that I think a president should be providing. And that's the kind of leadership that I think could get the Democratic Party back in a position where we're really winning elections. Look at Virginia. Look at Virginia. Ralph Northam ran a campaign based on civility and competence, which is true to who he is, was authentic to the kind of human being he is, and the voters embraced it. This is a huge opportunity for the Democratic Party to actually conduct themselves in a way that the American people are looking for. And it's the right answer as a matter of substance.
Congressman John Delaney, thank you very much for being on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Still ahead, we continue our conversation on sexual harassment in the wake of allegations against a growing list of prominent men, of which Senator Al Franken is now the latest. Plus, the Senate Judiciary Committee is once again trying to get Russia-related documents from Jared Kushner. We'll tell you what materials senators say are missing. Morning Joe is coming right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.